a while since I've shared some gardening with you, so today I thought it would be a really good day to shoot a video and show you what's happening in my garden towers and also in the smaller systems that I planted and was working with last September and October, where I was showing you how to plant them. So we garden all through the winter here in the Coachella Valley because it's really warm, we still get plenty of sunlight, and we can produce everything. In fact, we're called the salad bowl of the United States for the wintertime, especially because we produce most of the salad here on our large farms. But here in my little tiny garden, I have 2 garden towers, and I also have a few systems that I use. I use these little pots and also some bigger pots, which you can't see because it's in the back there, that I've also incorporated worm composting into. You might remember I did the orchid pots and put worms in there, and I'm going to show you that in more detail later. But today I came out and I started harvesting, and I was getting so much off of the garden towers that I thought, let me just show you what I've been getting so far. I have a bunch of trenchita kale, and then I have, which is more like a cabbage, and then I have like 4 other kinds of kale. I have, I believe this is the red Russian kale. I have the blue curly kale. I have the scarlet kale, which I apparently didn't plant as much of, but I think I still have a little more harvesting to do of the kale. And then I have the dinosaur kale. I have 2 different types of parsley. This is the curly leaf parsley, and I haven't yet started harvesting my flat leaf parsley, but I'm going to be showing you all of that. And the one thing that I really like is that I have so much space in these small systems that they're so integrated, and they're really based on permaculture, and that they're stacking so many functions on this one thing, that because I have at least 50 spaces to grow things here, it's okay if I let some of the spaces, let these plants go to seed. A lot of people will start cutting these plants out when they start to bolt, which means that they're trying to propagate themselves. That's the life cycle, and that's the goal of the plant, is to be able to get through its season, especially annual plants, produce seed, and then be able to extend its life into the next generation. So this is definitely bolted, but the cilantro plant makes these little seeds that we know as coriander. And so I'm going to use some of these seeds as, I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to use some of that little seed. I'm going to use some of them as spice, and then I'm going to use some of them to replant for next year. And that's the same thing that I'm going to do with my arugula here that's making these beautiful little flowers. And the flowers are actually, let me see, they're really good to eat too. But they're making seeds. So, is that good? Yeah, it's really good. It's nutty. Tastes nutty like the leaf does. Very delicious, and even though it's bolting, a lot of times the leaves will get bitter or stronger, and I must say that this is kind of it's very spicy, as arugula is, but it's still so delicious to eat. So I can still be eating this or adding these leaves to spice things up a little bit, whether it's in my salad or a stir fry. And then I can still leave these plants to be able to fulfill their mission, which is to produce seed, and then I'll have seed for the next year. I can't do that with everything, but I can certainly do it with this, and I can certainly do it with tomatoes without even trying, because if a tomato falls into the pot and you don't see it, which the cherry tomatoes do all the time, and it decomposes, that's going to give you a multitude of tomato plants for next season. And then your job is to just pluck out all the ones that keep coming up until you get to the one that you really want to keep, and then be disciplined enough to say, okay, this is the only one I'm going to keep. Now, I did that this year. I said, I'm only going to have 1 tomato plant, and I'm going to put it in a separate pot, because every year I've been growing them my garden towers in the top. And what happens, and I just cut the tomato plants out of both of these, what happened is it took over. It got huge. And so I was trying to continually stake it and manage it so that it wasn't shading out of anything else. But what happened was it got so dense that in the center where the worm tower is, I was getting stressed out trying to figure out how I'm going to get in there without breaking the tomato plant and all the other things like my Swiss chard that is completely shading out. How am I going to get in there and feed my worms? So next year I promise I'm going to be really very disciplined with myself. I am not going to let a tomato grow here. I don't care if 50 tomato plants try to come up in my garden tower, I'm plucking them all out. And the only one I'm going to keep is the one pot that's separate. So yeah, so this is what it's looking like now. We're going from cool season vegetables into warm season vegetables. But the thing that I have to decide now with my little garden, which is what you're going to have to decide, is it worth it here in the Coachella Valley to let things grow throughout the summer? A, it depends on what kind of system you have. B, if you're going to be here all summer to manage it. C, is it worth the water that it's going to take to support that, and worth the labor of you running around trying to keep things shaded enough, or me trying to roll my gardens in and out of the sun and the shade? I'm struggling with it, but maybe as I talk to you guys today and I go through my pruning, maybe I'll figure it out, because I find that oftentimes when I'm talking to you and working in my garden, I really do have some aha moments and revelations, and so you guys help me out a lot to make decisions about my garden. But right now I think what I'm going to do is start showing you how to harvest some things, because I think, traditionally, like when we go to the grocery store, a lot of times whole plants have been harvested. Maybe not kale, because as you can see here with the kale, you just take off the bottom leaves, and then you have your harvest, and then the plant just keeps growing. That's why it has such a long stem. And so here's some more dino kale I can add to my dino kale bowl. Same thing with the Swiss chard. You can just harvest, and I think I have some scissors here, which I really like to use. I really like to use my scissors so that I don't pull on the plant and disturb the roots at all. So what I do is I just come in and I just snip the outside leaves, always on these green leafies that kind of grow in a bunch and they keep growing out. Just snip the outside leaves and put them in your bowl. And then they just keep growing. They just keep growing and producing for you. And if some of the leaves don't look very good, or, sometimes they might have holes in them, like this one. This one had a hole in it. And what I discovered was a tiny little caterpillar eating my kale. So what I did is I took another leaf that didn't look as good, and I put that caterpillar in the leaf, and I squished it, and I put it in my worm tower for my composting worms to eat. Now I don't feel good about that because I don't like to kill things, but if I can justify it and get a yield from it, if that worm or that caterpillar that was eating my food can then feed my worms, they can then break down kitchen scraps and feed my garden, then I'm okay with it. I can do it with actually pretty fiercely. Okay, so that's how you that's how you harvest your Swiss chard and your kale. And also, that's how we're going to harvest our flat leaf parsley. Because the flat leaf parsley, that also keeps growing right from the center. It just keeps sending up shoots. And I planted all of this stuff back in September and October. And I I've been harvesting for 6 months already from this stuff. Well, I guess it should get a little while to grow, so at least 4 months I've been getting something every day, every week, you know, however I choose to harvest. So there's that. What else do we have here? Look, we have a ton. See, this is going to go to seed. Now, I'm going to leave some of this flat leaf parsley to go to seed, just like I'm leaving the cilantro and the arugula. Here's another arugula that's growing up from the bottom here. And look, I still even have lettuce. But the lettuce that I have here, this is, I think, Laos pointed leaf lettuce. This is my second planting of that. But it still comes up, and this doesn't even look that good. I think it got kind of hot and I didn't water it quite enough, but it doesn't look good. You can see that it has probably a leaf miner in there. Something's eating it. So I'm going to probably feed this to the worms. But I planted some of these things already 2 or 3 times. The lettuce I planted twice, at least. The beets and the carrots, which I don't really think I have any more of, except for these pitiful little plants here on the bottom, which I don't think you can see from there. They're not doing that well. I can just go ahead and pull those out. What else do I have on this tower? Oh, but what I have done really well with is my grocery store green onions, because these guys, let me see down there. Yeah, these guys also just keep growing from the center. And so I'll come out here and I'll get a whole bouquet of green onions and I'll cut them up into little pieces, put them in a jar, and I'll have those for 3, 4, or 5 days that I can just shake on top of my food. And it's really, really, really delicious. So, what else? Oh, okay, now look at this. Here's a tomato plant growing here. And what happened here is that I had that big tomato plant that was growing out of the top here that I was continually fighting with. And when I cut it out, I didn't notice this other little cherry tomato plant that was kind of all wrapped up in there. So now I still have tomatoes, so you'll never, even if you think that you've gotten rid of all your tomatoes, they're always there. They're always there. But the other good thing is I didn't even plant this or try, and I get to eat this nice cherry tomato. Really, really good. All right, so this is what I call my acid tower. And this is what I call my alkaline tower, because it takes a higher pH, because that's the cruciferous vegetables. So here is some red kale that I need to finish picking. And the thing about the garden tower is that things don't really get really huge in here, but they do keep growing. And so this really tastes always very tender and good, just what you want from kale. And I'm just kind of looking at the leaves here because it is time for the aphids to come in, and it's time for, you know, the caterpillars. I'm actually really surprised that I haven't seen more caterpillars except for that just one little one. I'm sure by the time I get in the house and start washing, that I'm going to find a lot more little caterpillars. But the thing also is that the more you're out here, like I come out every day to water and to check my garden, because it's right outside my door. It's very convenient. The more I can just kind of eyeball and see, you know, are there aphids? Do I need to spray them off so that they don't get an infestation? Are there caterpillars? Do I need to pick those off? And so whatever I need to do, I can just take 5 minutes and knock it out and do it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, you know, the expectations that we have to produce really big things are not going to be fulfilled in the garden tower or in a very small system. But yet, the amount of things that you can produce and the things that are really valuable and meaningful to your diet and your well-being are very possible here. So and I've also planted some shallots, and now I'm getting a little confused about which are my green onions and which are my shallots. Because you know the shallots are the like the onion bulbs that grow underneath the soil. So I don't want to pick these from the shallots because this is what's feeding those underground bulbs and what's making them grow. So I just try to guess. I guess this is when it would be really good to have put a stick, you know, an identification stick like this, which is for the kale, trunchita kale, by each plant. But that's another thing that I've got to get more disciplined about. Otherwise, I sit here and I think I know what I've planted, and I'm not sure if that's a shallot or if that's a green onion. So I think I'll just leave it there. I'll leave it. I think actually most of these are shallots. Yeah, I think so. I guess if I really got desperate and I needed a green onion, I could just take one of those and use it. So what else do I have here? Oh, I have a bunch of oh look, see, here's the scarlet kale hiding behind the marigolds. So I'm going to take a few leaves off of here. Uh-oh, there went a marigold. This leaf doesn't look too good, so I'm just going to throw that on the ground, and I'll pick it up later to feed to the worms. And then if I find a caterpillar, that's the leaf I'll use to squish the caterpillar. So I just take the leaves around the bottom outside, and then there's, you know, I leave 3 or 4 smaller leaves to help bring in enough light and make enough food to produce more leaves. Put that right there. And here are some little clovers. So I guess I need to do a little bit of weeding because I'm not sure if this is the nitrogen fixing clover. It's probably a weed seed that blew in. So I'm just going to take this out because if I knew what it was, and if I knew it was a good thing, I would leave it, but I don't know what it is. So I take it out. I'm going to feed it to the worms. Here's a nice, I think this is a tiny little plant. Sometimes I just throw some seeds in there, and then they just grow. And I think this is Thai basil. That's Thai basil. It's very delicious. So, and basil is going to do pretty well as it starts to heat up here. So I'm going to have basil growing. Here's some Thai basil that is already flowering and going to seed. Didn't get very big, but that's what I found happened to most of my Thai basil this winter. It just, maybe Thai basil doesn't get that, the leaves don't get that big. Some of these things are new to me. I just have to kind of grow them and try to figure them out as I go. But then here, oh, check this out. This is some celery grocery store celery that I planted. And you know what you do is you take there are some little roots that are still there, or if they've cut the roots completely off, you just still can take the butt of the celery, cut off the stalks. I leave I think I left what's that, 1.5 inches, and then I put that in water. I set it in a little shallow bowl of water for about a week or so, and then the roots started coming. And then I just put it in here, I just planted it. And now, about 3 months later, I have all this celery coming back. Now this celery, I've always found that when I plant it like that, because I don't gather it up and wrap it so that it gets like the grocery store celery that you can actually, you know, put cream cheese or peanut butter on and eat as, you know, a snack. This is kind of spindly, and it doesn't really, well, if I pick one of these and show you, I'll pick this one that's needs to be pruned off anyway. Because on the celery that's growing like this, you can actually, you can let this just keep growing from the center as well. But see, these ribs, I guess you would call them, they don't really get that big. in this situation. So, but what I do is they're really good for flavoring your food. So I chop it up and I use it in my stir fries or my soups or whatever. Even the leaves I use because it's really tasty. It tastes just like celery. But if you want the fancy stuff, then you go to the store and then you can put your peanut butter on it. So that one's going to go to the worms because it didn't look that good. There's a few in here that I'm going to prune off just around the bottom. Because what I don't want is I don't want the plant to continue to send energy to this. Or for this to keep trying to survive and drawing energy from the stalks in the middle that are looking better. So I just prune some of that stuff off. And then the rest of it should grow faster and healthier. And I got some really nice fresh growth coming out of the center there. So I didn't know it because I haven't been out here looking at my celery. But now I can harvest some celery if I want to do a stir fry. What else do I have? Oh, here I have some dino kale here. I'm going to cut off a few outside leaves. Oh, I have a bunch more here. Ah, I guess I wasn't finished harvesting my kale. There we go. Okay, so now there's holes here in these leaves. Now I gotta look and see, is there a little worm? I tell you, the little, or the caterpillar, the one that I found this morning, it was a fighter. I don't know what kind of caterpillar that was, but he was like trying to get away like I've never seen one try to get away before. I guess I did feel a little bad about that one. A little bit. But now the worms are eating it. So I don't see any caterpillars here, but I know that they're around. Really getting desiccated. What's going on here? Well, whoever ate this is gone. Now the worms get it. Ooh. Okay. Let's see. You know, I don't know if the caterpillar's on the floor or not, but I'm going to take this off because, again, I don't want the plant to try to have to. Some seed. In fact, this one is pretty dry. So usually I take the flowers off. Well, it's so windy it's going away. And then I can take the seeds out. Now look at how many seeds are in here. One time I counted a bunch because, you know, it varies how many seeds are in there. But I think I averaged that there were like 25 to 30 seeds. Look at all those seeds. Look. And then I can just let them blow away, and then maybe I'll get some marigolds out in the yard. That'd be nice. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that one just pulled out. So, and I planted some eucalyptus in my garden tower because I wanted to draw in the tiny beneficial insects like the parasitic wasps and maybe some pollinators because the bees really love this. But now it's kind of getting long, and I think this is going to keep growing for a while, but I'm just going to trim it. And then what that does is it not only, I have to be careful that I don't cut the other plant. But what that does is it not only tidies up the area in the garden, but it's going to allow a little bit more light to come into my kale plant that's growing right below it. And it's also going to revitalize once I cut off, you know, this spindly growth. It'll produce more one, but this was my eggplant pot. And I planted all this beautiful nasturtium around it, and it's coming. The eggplant is long gone, but I have some scarlet runner beans coming up there in the back. And before, you know, in the winter, I had planted, what did I plant? Some peas, different kinds of peas. Well, I've already harvested those, and now I planted the bean plant. But check out the vermicomposting environment. I just fed this morning, so I don't really want to dig down in there, but there are worms in there. So my strategy, remember when I wanted to save the worms, that I knew there were going to be cocoons in the soil that I put in there, because, you know, I harvested the soil or the worm compost from my worm tower. And so I wanted to make sure that if there were cocoons and they did hatch, that there would be food and a little environment, not only to keep the worms going and to help them survive, but also to create just a little bit more fertility in this one pot garden. And it absolutely did that. And so now in this garden, I've also planted some radishes and some carrots. I'm just keeping them going, keeping them rolling. And this is one of the pots that I'm going to try and think, what could I plant in there? Could I possibly plant in here, maybe in the center? What if I did like a summer squash, and then I put this pot under my little tree here? This is a great tangerine tree. It's been pruned up really high, so I think it would be, well, I would have to help it get established, but I think the vine would climb all the way to the top. So if I did like a kabuka squash or a butternut squash, I could probably train it up the tree. The other thing that I could do is I have this other pot. Okay, I'm going to have to lose my tripod. I have this other pot that I could work with. This is my little tomato pot, which also has the vermicomposting in the center there. And there are a lot of worms in there. Here, I'll actually dig in this one. I'll show you some worms in here. Hopefully we can see some.